The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and quiet dread. Machines beeped steadily, monitors flickered with lifelines, and the soft hum of the ventilator filled every pause between words. My father lay on the hospital bed, pale, thinner than I'd ever seen him, his skin stretched tight over the sharp edges of his face. Tubes snaked into his arms, 4 fluids dripping rhythmically, and a dialysis machine churned beside him, keeping him alive 1 grueling hour at a time. It wasn't enough. It hadn't been enough for months. His kidneys were failing, and the only thing that could save him now was a transplant that I was supposed to provide. "You sure about this, kid?" His voice was hoarse but carried that same stubborn edge I'd known all my life. Even now, weak as he was, he couldn't resist acting like he was the one protecting me. I nodded, unable to trust my voice. The truth was, I wasn't sure about anything. The doctors had run the tests, matched our blood types, gone through the paperwork, and scheduled the surgery for tomorrow morning. They'd praised my compatibility as a donor, calling it almost miraculous. But they didn't know the whole story. No one did. Not my father. Not the doctors. Not even my closest friends. There were things I hadn't told anyone, things that made the idea of walking into that operating room feel like stepping into a coffin. I stared at him, watching the faint rise and fall of his chest, remembering the years he'd raised me alone after my mother died. He worked double shifts at the mechanic shop, skipped meals so I could eat, sold his prized Harley to pay for my college books. Every sacrifice he'd made echoed in the lines of his face. I owed him everything. But there were some debts I couldn't pay the way he expected. "Get some rest," I whispered, forcing a smile. He grunted, half amused, half exhausted, and closed his eyes. I stood there for a long time after he drifted off, staring at the tangle of wires and tubes that represented his tenuous grip on life. Then I left the room, my hands trembling in my pockets, the weight of my decision heavier than ever. The hospital corridor was dim and quiet, the usual sterile silence interrupted only by the occasional squeak of rubber soles or the distant murmur of nurses. I walked past the reception desk, past the waiting room with its uncomfortable plastic chairs and stale coffee smell, out into the parking lot where the night air slapped me with its humid warmth. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from Mia. "You okay? Need me to come by?" Mia had been my rock these past few months. She'd known about Dad's condition, the transplant plans, the endless hospital visits. But even she didn't know the truth about why I couldn't go through with the surgery. My thumbs hovered over the screen. I wanted to tell her everything. Instead, I typed, "Yeah, just needed some air. Talk later." I slipped the phone back into my pocket and got into my car. The old sedan sputtered to life, headlights cutting through the darkness as I pulled out of the parking lot and onto the highway. The city skyline glowed faintly in the distance, a jagged silhouette of glass and steel under a cloudy sky. I drove aimlessly for a while, my mind swirling with guilt, fear, and the bitter taste of inevitability. Memories came flooding back. The letter I'd received 6 months ago from a stranger claiming to be my biological mother, the DNA test I'd taken in secret, the results that shattered everything I thought I knew. I wasn't my father's biological child. I wasn't even related by blood. The truth had blindsided me, hollowed me out. My father had adopted me when I was a baby, but he'd never told me. Maybe he never planned to. Maybe he wanted me to feel like his own in every way, and for most of my life, I had. But now, the hospital's compatibility tests didn't make sense. The doctor had been surprised by the match but chalked it up to luck. I knew better. The only possible explanation was that the stranger who contacted me, the woman who claimed to be my biological mother, had been telling the truth. And the man lying in that hospital bed, the man I called Dad, wasn't my biological father. But he didn't know. And if I told him now, when he was so close to the edge, it would crush him. Worse, if I went through with the surgery, the lie would deepen, burying us both in deception. I pulled over at a gas station, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, and stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. "Dad, I'm sorry. I can't go through with the surgery. There's something you need to know, but I can't explain it right now. Please believe me when I say I love you, but I have to figure this out first." It wasn't enough. It wasn't nearly enough to explain why I was running. But it was all I had. I packed a small bag, clothes, toiletries, my laptop, and left the apartment as quietly as possible. The sun was just beginning to rise, the faint blush of dawn creeping over the horizon. My chest ached as I drove away from the city, away from the hospital, away from my father. I didn't know where I was going. I only knew I had to find the woman who sent me that letter. The woman who claimed to be my real mother. The answers I needed were with her. If I was going to save my father, or at least be honest with